Okay. Let me explain something.
Oh, please.
You can't put a value on what we do.
Funny. I have put a value on what you do.
Well, if you won't budge, then I'm afraid we have no deal.
Then we're done. Would you like to hear my favorite passage from Shakespeare? Take the money.
Welcome to Money Unplugged. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for being here. For all the people who come on this podcast and talk to me about the award-winning show Succession, I figured it was time to feature Succession in the opening clip of the show. Today on the show, I talk with John Rotonti. He is a portfolio manager with Bastion Fiduciary. And I don't know if you listened to last week's episode with Heather Bonaparte. I got a lot of comments from listeners, very positive comments about that episode. Heather just laid it all out there. She shared some very personal stuff. And look, we all have our own individual issues and hang-ups when it comes to money. But we tend to keep those things to ourselves. And Heather just put it all out there, which was fantastic. And in this conversation you're about to hear with John, it's very much in the same vein. He is a smart, experienced investor. He is another one of those people in the industry who just grinds away at research. And at the end, John talked about the current investing landscape and AI and shares his thoughts on that. But before that, we get into some really just deeply personal stuff between John and his parents with respect to money. So let's get into it with John Rotonti. Where did you grow up?
New Orleans.
You grew up in New Orleans?
Grew up in New Orleans. I live in New Orleans now. I moved away for 12 years and I lived in New York, Alexandria, and then Denver.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have two sisters.
And where are you in the pecking order?
I'm the oldest. I have a sister that is 18 months younger than me and a sister that's 5 years younger than me. And, my earliest memories of money is having what I thought was a lot of it. We grew up very comfortable. We went to a private high school, my sisters and I. At the time, the tuition for this, actually, it was a K through 12. So even if you were in kindergarten, the tuition was $18,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, we lived in a beautiful mansion. My parents owned a restaurant and a very small boutique guest house hotel in the French Quarter. And my mom worked very hard in that restaurant. By the time I graduated high school, me and my two sisters we each had a car. We had been to Europe 3 or 4 times, Hawaii 6 times, all by the time I got out of high school. And so growing up, I thought I had a lot of money, or I thought my parents had a lot of money.
I was going to say, by the way, most people go their whole lives and don't go to Hawaii 6 times and Europe several times, much less by the time they're 18.
Yeah, so it was I was spoiled and everything was handed to me, Chris, on a silver platter or a golden platter. Really didn't know the value of a dollar. And then I went to college for the first time, University of Richmond. I'm 18 years old, and 3 things happened. One is, so my parents sent me to college with a credit card. If you need to buy something, use the credit card. And so I went to the bookstore to buy a textbook for one of my classes. These were big textbooks, probably cost like $120, $150, and the credit card got rejected. And so I called my mom. And I was like, Mom, what's going on? And she's like, oh, that's the credit card company made a mistake. And I'm naive. I don't know how the world works. I'm 18. I'm away from home for the first time. I'm like, all right. So I believed her. And then Valentine's Day comes around and I tried to buy my girlfriend flowers with the same credit card and it got rejected. And so I called my mom and she's like, oh, it's the credit card company again. But I'm thinking I'm starting to think something's up, right? And then the third thing was during one of the breaks, my freshman year, my high school friends and I all met in St. Louis to go to a St. Louis baseball game. And when it was time to check out, the hotel person told me that the card did not go through. And so one of my friends had to pay for my room. And I was embarrassed and I was ashamed. And so at that point, though, I knew that something was up. And I approached my parents about it. And I said, stop lying to me, because they had been lying to me. And I realized that they were living far beyond their means, far, far beyond their means, Chris, for my entire life. And it was all smoke and mirrors. And they eventually filed for bankruptcy, personally and professionally, their business. And it almost blew up my family, not because we went bankrupt, but because it was lies that they were giving to us for 18 years of my life. And it was tough.
I can imagine. Let me back up for just a second. You go to the bookstore, you're trying to buy books, the card gets rejected. You call your mom, she's like, no, it's the credit card company. In hindsight, did you find out that they were doing what certainly other people have done, which is they're using one credit card to pay off another, where it's like, was it a matter of them basically just swapping out different credit cards to cover the debt of another card?
Yeah. So I once I realized all of this, I actually started investigating it, but also memories started to pop up that made sense to me, Chris. And so, for example, growing up, we would go out to dinner as a family, the five of us, and my dad, before paying the bill for dinner, would ask my mom, what credit card should I use tonight? And it was because my mom was the one she controlled the purse strings in the house. She paid all the credit cards, all of that stuff. And she became very skilled at rolling through credit cards. And like you said, using one to pay off another, to pay off another, to pay off another. She became very, very skilled at it because, like I said, we lived this incredible life. But it eventually catches up with you. And so, it's a big lesson I learned. But it wasn't just the credit cards, Chris. She had multiple mortgages on the house and multiple mortgages on vacation homes as well. And so it was a lot of debt that they are still almost 30 years later trying to fully dig themselves out of.
Was money discussed at all in the home? In any straightforward way, or is this a situation where, money was discussed, but looking back, it was either discussed only at a surface level, or in hindsight, it was discussed and you realized that a healthy amount of it was lying?
It wasn't discussed. It was, the lifestyle that we lived made me believe that we were wealthy. At one point in time, I have a memory of my mom telling me, your dad and I are going to pay for your kids' college tuition. Now, I don't have kids, but I was in high school when she told us that your dad and I are going to pay for your kids' college tuition, so you don't have to worry about that. I think that she believed that at that time, Chris, but that she would not have been able to do that at all. Now, I do think she believed that at that time. However, my mom, who I'm obviously have a confusing relationship with, but I love her to death, she has a problem with the truth. She has a very complicated relationship with the truth. I don't really know why that is. I think it's because she doesn't want to disappoint her kids. And so she tells us what she thinks we want to hear, but she lies. And she lied about how much we had, and then she lied about how much debt she was in for a very long time. And, I'll just say that two things. One is I don't use debt. I have I have one of those 20/20 sub 3% mortgages. That's the only debt I have. I've never paid, I pay my credit card off in full every single month. I've never paid an interest of credit card debt. I own my car outright. I didn't have any student loans. And so I don't I don't use debt other than this very low rate mortgage that I have. And the other thing is, I have bailed out my parents financially in ways.
Did you have a job when you were in high school, or were you not encouraged in that direction?
I was not encouraged in that direction. However, I one summer worked in the family restaurant, but not because my parents wanted me to or encouraged me to, and not because I wanted to. One of my good friends growing up, his name was Sims, called my mom one day and said, "Hey, Miss Rotonti, my parents want me to have a summer job." Like most kids should, I think. And he asked my mom, "Can I be a busboy in your restaurant?" And my mom, she has a sweet, sweet, sweetheart, said, "Of course you can, Sims." And as soon as she hung up the phone with my friend, she said, "You're going to be working with him this summer."
She said, "Guess what?"
Not because she, exactly, not because she necessarily thought it was good for me, because she thought it would be strange if one of my friends was working for her and not me. She thought it would look weird. A lot of the trouble she got us into, Chris, this is important to the story, is she grew up with nothing, as did my dad. And she wanted, my dad just went along with whatever she wanted. She wanted us to have all the things that she didn't have and then some. And that just spiraled out of control. But it was important that other people saw her as someone that has things and has done well and been successful. And so, she bought, I remember she drove a G-Wagon growing up. You've seen one of these square looking Mercedes SUVs. They're like a tank. I think they actually have like a tank chassis, but they're like very expensive. And, I remember some of my friends, this is another memory. Like I remember some of my friends telling me, "Hey, like I know your parents are rich, but like they're not as rich as that family over there, and they don't drive a G-Wagon." And it was true. Like, a lot of what she was doing was just trying to, show people that she had arrived and she was successful and that she was taking really good care of her family.
I'm sure you weren't paid well as a busboy, because I can't imagine anyone who works as a busboy is paid well. But I'm wondering if you got anything positive out of that experience of working in the restaurant.
I definitely did. I worked hard at it that summer because my friend took it seriously. And so I took it seriously. I think the main thing that I learned from it, though, was that I did not love the restaurant business, which was a business that I thought at the time that I was going to inherit. And so that's the main thing that I learned from it. I learned how restaurants operate, because I spent a lot of time in the kitchen. I got to know the chef really well. His name was Slick. I got to know some of the managers really well. And so I got to learn how restaurants work. I got to learn how expectations that customers have in a restaurant, and how to deal with customers that are unfriendly at times.
There's no way to make this happen, but if there was a way to make sure that everyone had the experience of working in a restaurant for 3 months, whatever the job was, I feel like it would just result in a much kinder, more tolerant society, at least
so.
With respect to going out to a meal.
I think so, Chris. While I only took so many lessons from that summer working in the restaurant, when I became 18 or 19, however old I was when I found out that everything was a lie and that my family was completely broke at the time, that was when I grew up really, really, really fast, Chris. And I became a workaholic, a studyholic, and it's also when I learned how to invest, because I wanted to, find out a way to help my family dig themselves out of that. But, I threw myself into school, and I graduated Phi Beta Kappa and magna cum laude from the University of Richmond. And then I went on to get an MBA and graduated in the, top cohort of my class there. I have this incredible work ethic, but not because my parents, encouraged me to have an incredible work ethic, but because I realized at 18 that I was going to inherit nothing other than maybe a lot of debt, and that I was going to be completely on my own. Now, I may have realized that later than some other people, but at 18, I definitely realized it, and it changed the trajectory of my life.
At the University of Richmond, do I have this right? You got a degree in political science and government?
Yes, I did. Political science. Yeah.
Was that a career path you thought you were going to pursue, or was that something where you just thought, well, this seems interesting, let me do this?
I did. Yeah. I was fascinated by politics at the time. George W. Bush won his first election when I was in college, and it was highly contested, and there was a recount. And I thought this whole idea of a recount was like so interesting and exciting. You know, it's like coming down to the wire almost, this election for the leader of the United States. And so that's what got me interested in politics. And when I first graduated from the University of Richmond, I actually got involved in a couple of campaigns here in Louisiana. So I worked on a gubernatorial campaign and a mayoral campaign, and learned quickly that I didn't like working in campaigning. Like I learned quickly that I was more interested in policy and like lawmaking and like trying to help people than I was in trying to get someone elected. And the whole like political side of things I didn't like. I liked the policy side of things.
I'm curious about the timing of your MBA, because you went to Tulane University and you start your MBA program in the fall of 2009. And anytime I just hear any reference to the year 2009, I immediately flash back to the Great Recession. And I'm curious if you remember what the mood was like in classes in the fall of 2009, because the mood in the country was obviously not great.
Stepping back really quickly. So I'm freshman in college, taking us a little back here, 18. I realized I needed to help my family. So I go to the library, and I literally asked the librarian at the time, can you show me where the books on investing are? And I came across Peter Lynch's One Up on Wall Street. I read that book in like 2 nights, and it changed my life. It changed my life because reading that book, I realized, one, I understand everything he's talking about. Like he talked about PE ratios, Chris, and debt to equity ratios and some other basic investing ratios and financial concepts. And it all made just easy sense to me. So that was the first sort of epiphany I had. I can understand this. And the second epiphany I had was, I think I may want to do this for the rest of my life. So even though I got that political science degree, a lot of my free time in college was just spent reading about investing and reading about businesses. So I graduated college, briefly worked on these political campaigns, realized I didn't like that. And so then I went to work for the family business, which, like I said, was restaurants. I learned 2 things. One, that I definitely did not like working in restaurants as much as I liked investing, and that I couldn't work with my parents. After doing that for a few years, I went back to get my MBA, and that's the timing that you're talking about. So middle of the, global financial crisis, I would say that the mood was one of worrisome and caution that we wouldn't be able to get jobs coming out of our MBA program. I do remember a few of my classmates that had actually lost a job or transitioned to a new career, and so that's why they came to get their MBA. It was definitely a scary time. I did it. I loved my MBA program. I did it in 1.5 years. It's typically a 2-year program, but I just took extra credits and took credits during the summer. And and I went immediately to New York to work on Wall Street in a small boutique equity research firm. And at that time, it was still very somber, so I got to New York in December of 2010. We're still kind of slowly coming out of that Great Recession. And so, I started on Wall Street during that time.
It is one of those things that you only learn with time, I think, as an investor, as you go through those, because the lows really are terrible. And it's only with the benefit of hindsight that you, one, start to recognize when it's happening again. It usually never happens exactly the same way, but it's like, oh yeah, this is, there are similarities, at least in terms of the mood and the emotions. There are similarities between the global financial crisis and the dot-com bubble bursting. I don't know about you, but even with the benefit of time, it's still, it never gets easy, I guess is my point. It's never like, even if you've been through it before, you and I were talking right before we started recording about the current state of the market, which is, seemingly hitting new all-time highs every other week. And yet it feels a little frothy. And I don't think either one of us is going to be surprised if at some point in the next 6 to 12 months, there's a quote unquote correction.
Money is emotional and jobs are emotional. And so even if you're not an investor, corrections, market downturns, recessions, whatever form they take are scary because you worried about losing your job and your ability to pay for your family. Keep that roof over your head and all of those things. And then for an investor, no matter how long you do it, how experienced you think you are, most investors have emotions tied to money. And it's difficult to watch your net worth, at least on paper, go down by so much as it did in the dot-com bubble and the global financial crisis. Both of those times the markets fell about 50% at one point. That's a lot. It's an opportunity for some investors that have a long enough time horizon, Chris, that have the privilege to have a long enough time horizon. It's an opportunity, but it doesn't mean it's not scary.
Thanksgiving is coming up, and before you start stressing about the food you're going to serve or the food that you're going to bring to someone else's home, let me put your mind at ease. Because my friends at Dizzy Pig Barbecue have got Thanksgiving recipes on their website that you are going to love. When you go to the Dizzy Pig website, they have a tab at the top for recipes, and they've got, it looks like hundreds of recipes, honestly, but you can filter them by occasions. And one of the occasions is my favorite day of the year, which is Thanksgiving. So if you want help brining your turkey, or jazzing up your sweet potatoes, or mashed potatoes, or your stuffing, or your corn pudding, or that green bean casserole, I could keep going. That's how many recipes they have to help make your Thanksgiving extra delicious. Go to dizzypigbbq.com, find the recipes you want, pick the seasonings you need, and use the promo code MONEY. You get 10% off. And again, this is not some massive conglomerate. Dizzy Pig is a small family-owned company. They make their seasonings in small batches. They bottle them by hand, for crying out loud. I'm telling you, it's going to make your Thanksgiving more delicious. Click the link in the show notes or go to dizzypigbbq.com. Get 10% off when you use the promo code MONEY. All right, let's get back to John. Let's go to the speed round.
Let's do it.
What is a thing that you have bought that makes you happy?
I don't have expensive taste for things. I drive an old pickup. I don't have any jewelry, not even an Apple Watch, not one of those rings. My wardrobe is pretty much the exact same every day, whether I'm working at home, meeting a client or a prospect or going out with friends. It's like jeans, hiking boots, and like a fleece or a sweater. I don't deny myself material things. I just don't have taste for them. But I do spend on experiences, usually travel or dining out. And some of the most joy I get every week is I treat myself to breakfast at this French bakery every Saturday and Sunday here in New Orleans. The food is amazing. Yeah, the coffee is amazing. Sometimes I bring my mom and we just talk about stuff. If she can't go, then I just work, I read, I talk to strangers, and it brings me some of the most joy and happiness that I experience every week. Week in and week out, it brings me joy and happiness.
My mouth is already watering. What is the name of this place?
Boulangerie. It's on Magazine Street in New Orleans. If you ever come down, I'll treat you or we'll go to breakfast, I'll treat you, whatever. I would love to take you.
Deal. Have you ever made a purchase that you regret at any point in your life, and sometimes you find yourself thinking about it?
My house that I live in now. It's a great house, brand new renovation in 2020. It's strong, it's sturdy, it's in a great neighborhood, in high demand. But I bought the house sight unseen in 2020 while I was living in Colorado because it's a long story, but my parents needed a place to live. They were in urgent need of somewhere to live, and I was going to have to move in with them to take care of them physically. So I'm in Colorado. I find out about all of this during a phone call. They were living in a hotel. They didn't have a place to stay, and they couldn't afford that hotel. And my dad aged pretty quickly in the year leading up to that. And so I learned that I need to put a roof over their head and that I need to move in with them to take care of them. And so, yeah, I bought this house, which once again is a great house, but it's a little cramped for us to be living in together. So my plan, Chris, is in the next 18 to 24 months is to buy a piece of land in the city here in New Orleans and build a house that is large enough and that is sectioned off in a way that I can live under the same roof with my parents, take care of my parents, but also at the same time have the privacy that I want and need.
What's the last thing you splurged on just for yourself?
It's usually vacations. And so the last one was skiing last year, wonderful trip to Beaver Creek. I'm probably going to go join my sister's family in Aspen this year for skiing, or early next year, I should say. So yeah, it was Beaver Creek, and I'll probably do the same with Aspen this year.
What is one thing about money that you wish you knew earlier in your life?
That's easy. Compounding, starting early and then time in the market.
What is a charitable cause that you like to support?
In the last several years, I've been giving money every year to the Hudson River Community Sailing. It's a nonprofit that provides sailing and maritime education and also like fun community events to underserved kids in New York City. My dear friend is heavily involved. It's called with the HRCS, and he tells me they're doing really wonderful things with the youth in New York.
Do you have a favorite movie or TV series that has money as a through line?
Does The Hangover count, like Vegas and gambling?
Absolutely.
Okay, I enjoy Vegas, but I don't gamble. I just think that's an insanely funny movie. But so some others that come to mind. Heat, Michael Mann masterpiece with an incredible cast. The first Den of Thieves, where I think Pablo Schreiber played just a great bad guy in it. And then Gerard Butler, he's sort of this like badass cop that plays by his own very questionable rules. That's kind of a dark movie, but I do think excellent. And I don't want people to think that I'm glorifying bank robbers with Heat and Den of Thieves. And so I'm going to finish off with It Could Happen to You, when Nicolas Cage wins the lottery and shares it with Bridget Fonda.
Based on a true story, right? That's like
based on a true story, Chris.
There was an actual cop, I think, in New York City who like wins the lottery and basically splits the money with the waitress because he doesn't have money for a tip.
Exactly right. Yeah. New York City, I like a lot of movies and TV shows that take place in New York. I lived there for 5 years. I still have wonderful memories of that city. I think it's the, greatest city in the world based on some measurements. And so I end up liking a lot of movies and shows that have New York in it.
But it's a good reminder. I haven't watched Heat in a long time, and I need to watch that again because that is such a classic movie.
It's a classic, and make sure you watch it before Heat 2 comes out because Michael Mann says that it's in the works.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Last thing is a penny for your thoughts, and this is just any sort of wisdom you want to share with people who are listening, although I think it's safe to say you've already shared a lot, but it doesn't have to be about money. It can be about anything.
There's this question of, I think, we talked about before we came on the show, Chris, is are we in an AI bubble? I don't really know. I think we're probably in the early innings of an AI bubble. I think there's definitely a bubble inflating. I don't know how long it will last. I don't know how much longer we have to go. But I think an important question, Chris, for an investor at least, like myself, a portfolio manager, is if you're a portfolio manager managing money for other people and you think we're in an AI bubble, should you be investing in AI stocks? And I don't think it's as easy as just saying no. Netscape IPO'd in 1995. Alan Greenspan said that there was irrational exuberance in the market in 1996. And the bubble didn't pop until 2000. I'm not saying what I'm doing or what I'm not doing, but I think it's a thoughtful question to be asking. If you're managing money for other people and you believe there's an AI bubble, should you be invested in AI in some way, or do you avoid it entirely? And so that's something I've been giving a lot of thought to, Chris.
You know what? He's not the only one wrestling with that question. Next month, when all the business and financial media are doing their year in review shows and articles, the questions around AI are just going to dominate that conversation. If you want more thoughts on investing from John Rotonti, he has a free investing newsletter called J. Rose Notes. You can find it on the Bastion Fiduciary website. It is lastbastion.com. You know what? I'm just going to put it in the show notes. Lastbastion.com. Also, if you have questions or comments for the show, drop me a note. info@moneyunpluggedpod.com. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.